20th, 2020. My name is Lori Kurtz, pronouns she, hers. Would you please introduce yourself, say your pronouns if you care to, and tell us all the things you do?
I'm Remy Rose. I am a burlesque performer, pronouns she, her. And besides burlesque, I also am a costumer, a full-time professional hairstylist, a cat mom, a wife, vegan. Those are some things I do.
Okay, terrific. We'll start off with a big question. What is burlesque?
I feel like that can be answered in a lot of different ways. But I guess the general answer would be that burlesque is the art form of striptease. I mean, if you're going to put it simply.
Yeah. And what's the difference between stripping in a club and burlesque stripping?
Well, I don't strip in burlesque clubs, so I feel like it's kind of hard for me to, fully answer that question. I would say there's a lot more similarities with burlesque shows and stripping in a strip club than people would generally think. I think a lot of people think they're very opposite. But, burlesque being the original striptease art form, stripping in a club came from that, so I think they are very, very similar. I would say you kind of have to look at it from state to state. Laws are different everywhere. So I would say looking at Oregon, stripping in a strip club, people do get fully nude. At a burlesque show, you're going to end up going down to a G-string and pasties, being the most naked that you would possibly get. So I would say that would be one big difference. But then in other states, you can't get fully nude at a strip club. So they're going to seem a lot more similar. Also being that stripping in a club, that is a place that's, open every day. There's going to be dancers there working every day at the club that it's open, where a burlesque show, is going to be at a venue, like a 1 to 2 hour long show that you're going to go pay to see and attend. So I would say the structure is different, but you can see some wild stuff at a strip club and at a burlesque show, and then see something that's a lot more like classic style burlesque. You'd see that at a burlesque show and at a strip club, and I know there's certain burlesque like strip club places in Portland, so there's ones that are like based off being more burlesque. So you'll see like a featured performer at a strip club doing like a burlesque set. So I feel like they're very intertwined, more than people that aren't in the scene, you wouldn't think as much. So
yeah. And what are the strip clubs that are maybe a little bit more burlesque based?
There's one downtown Portland called the Kit Kat Club. A lot of my friends, they dance there, and a lot of those people are burlesque performers too. Yeah. So they're very intertwined.
Yeah. And then how do you describe the kind of burlesque that you do?
So I am a big lover of rock and roll and metal. I've always been into more like kind of darker, weird stuffs in general, like my whole life. So I think that really shows when I'm performing. I tend to perform to more metal and rock and roll and alternative music just in general. So that comes out also in my costuming. I would say you're seeing a lot more of that influence too.
Yeah. So where were you born and where'd you grow up?
I was born in San Francisco, and I grew up in Pacifica and Concord, and then, which is the East Bay. And then when I was 18, I moved to Oakland and lived there like in my early teens, or late teens, early 20s.
Mm-hmm. Are you from an artistic family?
Yeah, I would say that my parents are pretty artistic. My grandma was really into sewing, And so when I was very young, I grew up sewing Halloween costumes. Like she and my mom would both sew all my costumes. And then when I was little, I remember my mom always making Barbie outfits for all my Barbies. And I thought that was really fun. And she always said it was a good way to like make fun costumes that were very tiny and required very little fabric. So yeah, I would say I come from an artistic family.
Yeah. So then what brought you to Oregon?
So in 2010, I met my now husband, and he was playing in a band, and I was in a burlesque punk rock can troupe called the Can Cannibals, and we were doing a 2-week-long tour on the West Coast, and we performed in Olympia at a festival, and my husband's band was playing. So we met and did a long distance thing for about a year, and then, you know, I was down in Oakland and he was here. So then we were like, what's going on? What are we doing? And I just decided that I wanted a change. I lived in the Bay Area my whole life, so I decided I wanted to try something new, and I really like Portland, so that's what got me up here.
What year was that?
I moved here in 2011.
And what did you do in your formative years, whatever those are, that led you toward performance?
Well, I started performing, I mean, I was pretty young when I got into burlesque. It was in my early 20s. But before that, I mean, I had been a dancer my whole life, like since I was 3 years old, taking dance classes. So I've always really been into dancing and performing in general. I also started doing hair, working in a salon when I was 18. So I've been doing that for a while too. So yeah, I guess I had always been performing and dancing and creating and being artistic in those kind of ways. Even when I was in high school, I would make all of my own clothes and sew them up, like very punk rock. So yeah, that kind of, you know, all those things kind of channeled me towards burlesque, I feel like, in a way.
Yeah. And then what kind of education or training certificates do you have?
Just like in general?
Yeah.
So I'm a professional hairstylist. I would say that's probably about it with like professional certifications. Yeah. So
all those dance classes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not like certified in dance. I didn't go to college for dance, but I've taken like numerous dance classes, just in general. Like I still take classes at least once a week if I can.
Oh,
so, yeah.
Here in Portland?
Where?
Yeah.
My friend Evie owns a dance studio in Southeast called Vega Dance Lab. And so I take burlesque classes there, also like hip hop classes and just kind of cardio, good workout classes and stuff like that. And I feel like that's important for me to, you know, continue learning new things, doing burlesque and just like helping with choreography in general, because I do include a lot of dance in my acts. Not everyone does, you know. So I have friends who they'll say like, I'm not a dancer, but they're an amazing burlesque performer, you know. So it's just, it varies what your style is. But I would say I definitely include a lot of dance in mine. So taking classes for me is important to just like learn new moves. And when it comes to choreographing a new piece, I have like fresh ideas in my head.
Yeah, great. So in those formative years, was there someone, an influence or an inspiration to you?
In my formative years of
dancing and yeah.
I guess a lot of my dance teachers, you know, like people who would train me dancing. In high school, I did dance competition, did hip hop and tap competition. And so I feel like those teachers to me are people that I really looked up to, just because they really knew what they were doing and they're really talented. And I wanted to be more like them.
Yeah. So what year and exactly how did you get started in burlesque?
So I got started in burlesque, let's see, I would say probably around 2008 or 9. I was in my punk rock can troupe, the Can Cannibals. We're from Oakland, and so we, you know, we're a dance troupe that did some like can stuff, but just like all kinds of different dance performance. We always danced to like punk rock or rock and roll alternative music. And we started performing at burlesque shows. So that kind of opened our eyes up to like, oh, this is kind of what we're doing, but a little bit different because it involves striptease, and we weren't really doing a striptease. We had like, same kind of style, like we had our corsets on and our big skirts and everything. But me, so the girl who started the troupe, Vadi Vaboom, and we both were like, oh, this is fun and interesting, like a little bit different. But we had always performed in large groups, so we had never done solo performance. And a lot of burlesque, is performing solo. Sometimes there's troupes, but it's mostly solo performance. So we were both terrified, and we had been dancing our whole life, so we'd been on stage and performed, but never doing it solo. So we're like, okay, I want to do this, you want to do this, let's do it together. So we started a duo, and we called it the Dish Rag Dollies because we wanted something that like kind of sounded grimy, like a little punk rock vibe, but at the same time something, like kind of classic burlesque and vintage sounding. So we started doing our duet and doing that at burlesque shows to kind of like get more comfortable with doing striptease in general, and then also not having a large number of people with you on stage.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. And then how did you develop your career from there?
We both kind of decided we wanted to start branching out into doing solo performances. So we started doing that. I would say I started doing that around 2010, shortly before I moved up to Portland. So I did start performing solo in the Bay Area, so mostly like Oakland, San Francisco, and then moved up here. And that's where I feel like I really started getting more involved in the burlesque community, and also getting more involved with just like solo performance in general. So it did take me a little bit of time to start doing like a good amount of shows and getting to know everyone up here. So I feel like more 2012 was when I really started getting to know the burlesque scene in Portland, just getting to know everyone in general.
Yeah. And then costumes. Tell me about your costumes.
So I like to make my own costumes. I don't make everything, but when I do make my own costumes, I tend to repurpose a lot of materials. I'm not good at using patterns. They terrify me. That's one of my goals in life, is to get better at using patterns in general. But I mean, I think just because this is how I've been making clothes since I was young in general, is going to the Goodwill, buying something, being like, oh, I could visualize that turning into this. So, for example, I have a Mother Nature act where the whole thing starts out in this green robe with long sleeves and flowers that are all attached to it, lots of tulle, very flowy. And that was originally a white wedding dress that I got at the Goodwill. I cut it all up and then I changed it into a robe and dyed it green and added all this bling to it. So that's kind of my style of creating costumes, just because that's what I more feel comfortable with, and I do like that I am reusing something too.
Yeah. And so what's your costume studio space like?
So I'm very lucky that I have like a craft room in my house. We have a full finished basement, being that we're in Portland and have an older house, so I'm able to have a space where I can keep all of my costumes. My husband built just from Home Depot a really nice costume rack. So it's just out of old piping attached to the ceiling, and I can hang all my dresses and everything. And then I have a table with my sewing machine and a little ring light that I set up because it's in the basement and it's very dark down there. So I have like a little makeshift studio. I have mirrors that I had gotten just from Craigslist that I have on the wall, so I'm able to practice when we do group acts in my troupe. Everyone usually comes over to my house because I have a nice space and we can do it all there. So
that's great. So you've done burlesque in the Bay Area and now in Portland. What's the burlesque community like in Portland?
I would say style wise, it's pretty diverse. Like we have a lot of different things going on. It's very saturated. I would say there's a lot of neo, there's a lot of classic. Then me and my friends tend to do like very alternative stuff. We have our metal burlesque troupe. So it's nice because it's kind of all over the place with different things. I feel like being a burlesque performer, Portland in general, our whole like motto of keeping it weird and everything, like, whatever you're into, you can find it in Portland. So I feel like there's a lot going on, which is really neat because not everyone is into the same thing. So it's easy to like kind of find your niche in what you're into, and there's probably going to be a show for you that's going to be a great match for you to perform at.
Yeah. And then the audiences, who comes to see burlesque?
I would say the audience tends to be pretty diverse. Looking at the audience, I tend to realize that it is usually more women than men, which I guess people would think it would be the opposite way around. But a good mix of people. I would say, being that it is, we are doing a strip tease, it tends to be more liberal leaning people in general. I don't think you would find someone super conservative at a burlesque show. But it's a very diverse crowd with the people that are there, which I think is cool.
Yeah. And so tell me about the heavy metal and burlesque connection.
Yeah, so in 2010, my friends Rocket and Vera Mystera, they started Sign of the Beast Burlesque, which is the troupe that I'm in. And it had been, just a show where, they were like, okay, well, we're into metal and alternative music. We also do burlesque. We want to create a show for that. So they started calling it Metalesque. So that was just, the group of friends performing and doing that. So I joined it a couple years after they started it. I remember I went to my first Metalesque show because I had heard, there's, girls performing to metal, doing burlesque, and those are things that I love. And so I remember me and my husband went to it, and he's in metal bands. And I was just like, oh my God, these girls are so cool. Like, I just remember thinking it was the coolest thing ever, and I was like, they need to become my friends because they're so awesome. And so, yeah, that's like when I decided I wanted to get to know them and be a part of that. So it started out being Metalesque, just a show, and then 2016 we changed it into being a festival. So we have people that apply from all over the world that come to do the festival, and the festival is the first weekend of October, so it's an annual festival that happens. We still do our local shows, that is just us members of Sign of the Beast in the troupe. Right now for this year, we're planning to do quarterly shows, and then we'll have like a special guest who is not in our troupe, but they'll, also come and do like a heavy metal burlesque performance. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's just basically metal and burlesque put together.
And do you help produce and plan, and tell us all about what goes on?
So I joined the production team of Metalesque Fest, I guess like a year and a half ago. So this 2020 will be my second year working on it. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I had been in the troupe for a while, and then once High Fleisch and Rocket started doing the Metalesque Fest, I just saw, all the work going into it, and I had produced one show solo on my own before, so I've done a little bit of producing, not a ton, just because it is a lot of work, and it kind of stresses me out, like being one person having all of this work. But what I figured is, with them, like it's two of them doing this huge festival, if I come on, I can help do work, but it's not me doing all of it. I like having other people to bounce things off of with something that's that big of a production. So also Dee Dee Pepper joined the same time as me, and Wanda Bones. So we have 5 of us who are producers of this festival. And it's a lot of fun. But it is a lot of work at the same time too.
Yeah. How does one, if I can ask about finances, how does one finance that up front? Do you recoup your investment, or how does that all work?
Yeah, so I would say we try to start out with having a bank from previous years, previous shows, that we can use that money to start out with. It's very expensive to produce a burlesque show or burlesque festival in general, because we have a headliner that we have to pay, fly them out to the festival. And then not all festivals are like this, but we guarantee that everyone's going to make a certain amount of money at our festival. So, you're paying for that too. So, it's very involved with all that. What was the original question? Sorry.
Just how you finance that, what you put up front. Oh, yeah. Do you recoup what you...
Yeah, so I would say doing that, and then also having sponsors. We try to get sponsors that would make sense with our festival.
What do they give?
So we try to get sponsors who will give us money, and that's going to go towards like our headliners and just all the fees that we have for the festival in general. But also we do raffles. So that's a really good way to have incentives for people at the festival to basically donate money and they get something out of it. We don't have tipping at our festival. Some people do. But instead of doing that, we have the raffle. So that's something that people can win things, and it's money that will go back to the performers. So I think it is good to, start out with having some money. You need to have that in general before you start the festival. But then we do have an application fee if you apply to the festival. So that is a big portion too of paying for the things that we need to pay for in order to put it on as well.
Yeah. And so then do you travel to perform at festivals and other places? I
haven't done a ton of it. That's actually something that I'm working on for 2020 is I do want to travel more and get out of the West Coast area. So that's my goal, is to prepare for that. Get some really good videos of acts I have, because you really need to have that before you go and apply to a festival and try to get into one. So my goal is to do a lot more burlesque traveling.
Yeah. How does one get those videos?
Just from performing in general, like some of the shows that we do, there will be a videographer there, and then we will pay them, to get a good professional video, or sometimes I'll make my husband, take a video of me on his cell phone, which is not the best, but yeah, so usually just you got to be performing in general and have your act ready. Sometimes you could get away with sending something that's like in your bedroom, like that kind of thing, but it's best to have professional videos showing what your act is going to be like on stage, because I think it's very different seeing it on stage with an audience as opposed to doing it in your bedroom.
So that's a lot to juggle. Can you just paint us a picture, pick a week, describe a week in the life of Rummy Rose?
Okay, so I would say every morning I start out with a very giant cup of coffee. It usually looks something like this. Maybe I'll have two. So I start out with that, and then I would say the first thing I usually do is I get on my phone and I post to social media. That's a very important part of promoting yourself nowadays. Being that I'm also a professional hairstylist, that's my day job. That's another big part of it too. So I go onto my Rummy Rose page. I'm going to post something that morning, a show I have coming up, or like a photo shoot I just did, just engaging people with my page. Then I go on to my hair page and I'm going to post, a picture that I took of one of my clients. That to me is really important too, because, we don't really do ads in newspapers anymore. It's just doing social media. So I get a lot of clients from seeing my social media page, friends of friends being like, oh, hey, check her out. Look at this cool stuff she's done. So yeah, posting on there, and then on my posting days for Sign of the Beast Burlesque, going on there, and then posting on that page as well. So it's a lot to do. I like to do it in the morning. I find that's best because when I'm working at my day job, I'm there for 10, 11 hours. I have a very long day, so I can't be on my phone all day interacting with people on social media. So I like to do it first thing in the morning. That way I have some time while I'm getting ready for work to engage with people, get on there, do that. Then I would say I go into looking at emails, emailing for burlesque shows, emailing or texting my clients. So I do a lot of that, being that I'm an independent contractor. I basically work for myself doing hair. So it's like I'm always booking clients. I'm always, on my phone working with people. So yeah, I do a lot of that. Then it would be if I'm going to work, going to the salon, working. On my days off, I usually like to go to the gym. Get like an hour workout in, stretch really well after that, practice my splits and headstands and whatever else I'm working on at the moment. I think for me, trying to be active is really important with being a performer. It takes less stamina to get through like a 4-minute long set, even if you're not dancing or doing something really acrobatic, it's just a lot of energy you're putting out there. And I find for me, working out and going to the gym or dance classes or whatever really helps to build that stamina so I can be on stage and not feel like I'm gonna die and like get through my set, and just like have more energy to like put out there in general. So doing that, working, costuming, like I come home from work, if I'm inspired by a new act, I'll sit down and start working on costuming. If I have a show coming up, it's gonna be running that act, getting ready for the show, rehearsing, practicing, making sure that none of my costume pieces are falling apart, because after, a lot of wear and tear and ripping pieces off, things tend to fall apart and need some love and restitching. So yeah, I would say with burlesque in my day job, that's kind of what my week looks like. And then I try to squeeze in hanging out with my 3 cats and my husband and having somewhat of a social life with my friends. So I'm a very busy person, but I think I like it that way. I feel like sluggish if I don't have a lot going on. So I think I kind of thrive off of having, a lot going on in my life and keeping that momentum going.
So how many acts do you have in your repertoire right now?
Oh, I would have to go and count. But it's funny, I actually just posted this morning on my Instagram that I counted, and I am working on 6 new acts right now. Because this time, I know, I'm kind of crazy, but this time of year, it's like, I don't know why, every January, I tend to be like, okay, I want to work on new stuff, and being in Portland, it's cold and rainy, like, I don't want to go outside, so I tend to go into my craft room, and that's where I am for hours, and I just get really motivated. So I'm working on 6 acts right now that are either acts I've already had that I'm revamping or brand new acts. I feel like in the last year I've kind of realized that I have a lot of acts that I've done over the years since I've been performing for so long now that I'm like, oh, I have that act. I don't really like that act, but it's sitting in my craft room, and I might as well do something with it or get rid of it. So I'm kind of going through everything and either revamping it or tossing it out or doing something new. So that way I'm more like having acts that are festival ready, things that I'm proud of, that I want to put out there and put on the stage. So I would say if I had to count, I probably have like about 10 acts that are like, ready to be performed and everything. So.
And so what is your process for creating a new piece of burlesque for you to perform?
It usually starts with the music for me. I really love music, and I think that's where I tend to find most of my inspiration starting out. So I'll hear a song and I'm like, oh, I love that song. I really want to perform to it. So I'll start with that, and then I think I tend to really envision what it would look like on stage, you know? So I imagine myself on stage. What am I wearing? What kind of dancing am I doing? What is the mood? What is that character? You know, and then sometimes it will start with a costume piece, you know, and it's like, okay, I'm going to make this thing. I really want to make this, and then put the music to it, put the choreography to it. But I do tend to start with music most of the time.
Yeah. And does that process change when you're invited to do a show that's a theme show? The theme is decided by the producer?
Yeah, I would say it does change that. I think for that, I would probably start with the act concept. And then the music might come after that. It's something that fits the mood.
Yeah, great. There's a lot of awareness right now about cultural appropriation. What are your considerations when you're putting together a routine or a festival or a show?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I am definitely trying to be aware of and educate myself just in general. You know, being that I am like a white cis performer, I try to really think about my act, any act that I'm working on, and, you know, thinking like, am I appropriating anyone with this act in any way, being my costuming, movement, whatever, and just try to like put myself in someone else's place and think like, okay, would someone be offended by this act in any way, and just being very aware of that. And I would say I'm always still learning too, and just trying to be aware in general. So I think as a burlesque performer, that is something very important to take a look at.
Mm-hmm. And about diversity in burlesque in Portland, what are you seeing? How do you define diversity, and then how are you achieving that in your work?
Yeah, I think that is definitely something very important. In our burlesque, metal burlesque troupe, Silent Beast Burlesque, and with the festival, that's definitely something we've been looking at in general too. We have our applications open up a week earlier for POC performers, and that is, you know, free for them to apply, because we realized, you know, looking at our cast, like, okay, if this is mostly all white cis women, we need to do something about that and try to change this, make this more inclusive. And how can we go about approaching that and changing that? What can we do? So yeah, I think that's something we're definitely looking at in general, that I think is important to do, especially being in Portland, that it's, you know, in general, I feel like it's a lot of white people, you know, to put it simply, in Portland. That's something that you realize. And so it's like, okay, how can we make our community more inclusive, and what the shows that we're doing and putting out there more inclusive in general?
Right. People in burlesque have told me it empowers them. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely empowering. You know, getting up there and being half naked on stage to an audience of people that are a lot of strangers. You might not know a lot of people out there. It just really being comfortable in your own skin, I think, is very empowering in general.
Yeah. And so people talk about burlesque as a force for social change. How do you see that?
Yeah, I think, you know, women in general in our society are taught to, you know, not be comfortable in exposing themselves in their own skin. So I think, you know, just really embracing that, you know, is a very powerful thing. Being proud of your body, you know, whatever your size, skin color is, whatever, just like owning that in general, I think is a very powerful thing, because we're not really taught that, especially as women. So yeah, I think it is a powerful force.
What, if any, challenges are facing burlesque today?
Challenges, I think the being very inclusive thing is very important. we just had a Sign of the Beast Burlesque meeting last night talking about how we can be more inclusive with disabled performers. So I think that's something that I'm noticing right now, and I think other people are taking a look at too, being like, okay, what if someone is in a wheelchair? How are we going to get them to have the same opportunity to perform at our venue on our stage? You know, like, how can we tell people, like, okay, if, you know, you have some kind of need, like, this is how we're going to meet that. So I think that's an important thing to be taking a look at in general. And it could be, you know, maybe a mental disability, or someone can't handle certain lighting, you know, just being really accommodating in general. I think there's a lot of things that we take for granted, that we need to realize, hey, there's other people who this thing that I can do and I don't have an issue with is going to be an issue for them. And how can we be more inclusive and include them in our community?
And so, final question, what would you like the general public to know or understand about burlesque?
Oh, what would I like people to know? That burlesque, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's just like a really great art form. You know, it's a very empowering art form in general. And people are coming from all different backgrounds to do burlesque. You know, some people do work in strip clubs too. Some people, you know, have all kinds of, you know, you could be like a doctor or a musician or a hairstylist. It's a lot of people just coming together for that art. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I'm glad that it's something that still exists and is growing and evolving.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.